My parents skipped my son's funeral, then demanded his $1.5 million inheritance to buy my sister a dream. I buried my 9-year-old daughter, Lily, on a Thursday afternoon in October. The chapel was small, tucked away on the outskirts of Portland, surrounded by Douglas firs that swayed in the autumn wind. The pews were mostly empty. A few of Lily's teachers sat in the back row. Our neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, brought a casserole wrapped in foil. My ex-husband's cousin showed up, though I hadn't spoken to her in 3 years. But my mother wasn't there. My father wasn't there. My younger brother, Tyler, wasn't there. I kept checking my phone during the service, certain something terrible must have happened. A car accident. A medical emergency. Something that would explain why my own family would miss this. The funeral director, a soft-spoken man named Gerald, kept glancing at me with this expression that made my skin crawl, pity mixed with confusion. He'd asked earlier if we should wait a few more minutes. I told him no. We couldn't wait anymore. The service was short. I'd written something to say, but when I stood at the podium, the words disappeared. I just stared at the small white casket covered in sunflowers, Lily's favorite, and tried to remember how to breathe. Someone in the back cleared their throat. I sat back down. Afterward, at the graveside, I stood alone under a rented tent while they lowered my daughter into the ground. The wind picked up, scattering leaves across the grass. My phone vibrated in my coat pocket. For a split second, my heart jumped. Finally. An explanation. An apology. I pulled it out with shaking hands. It was a notification from Instagram. My mother had tagged me in a post. I almost dropped the phone. The post was a carousel of photos. 5 pictures of a beach house. White walls, vaulted ceilings, massive windows overlooking the ocean. The caption read, "New chapter. Sometimes life pushes you toward the change you need. Excited for this next adventure. Beach with umbrella #sparkles." I scrolled to the second photo. The real estate listing was visible in the corner. Pacific Palisades, California. Listed at $2.8 million. My vision went dark at the edges. Lily's life insurance policy had paid out $1.2 million. Her college fund, which her father and I had built since she was born, held another $400,000. The settlement from the accident that killed her, the drunk driver who ran a red light, added $900,000. $2.5 million. I clicked on the listing link my mother had shared. The property details loaded slowly. When I saw the offer price at the bottom of the page, my knees buckled. $2.5 million. Accepted offer. Closing in 30 days. I stood there in the cemetery, dirt still fresh on my daughter's grave, staring at my phone. Behind me, Gerald was talking to the groundskeeper about filling in the plot. Mrs. Kowalski touched my shoulder gently, said something about being available if I needed anything, then walked back to her car. I was alone. My family hadn't missed the funeral because of traffic. They hadn't been delayed by weather or work. They simply chose not to come. And while I was saying goodbye to my child, they were celebrating their new beach house. I drove home in silence. My apartment felt wrong when I walked in, too quiet, too still. Lily's backpack was still hanging by the door, her sneakers kicked off underneath. I'd meant to put them away before the funeral, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. I needed to understand. I needed to know if this was real, if my family had actually done what I thought they'd done. I logged into the flower delivery site my mother used for every occasion: birthdays, holidays, apologies. She'd given me her password years ago when she needed me to order something for my aunt's retirement party. The password was still the same. Tyler 1995. My brother's birth year. I found the order history. The funeral arrangement, a modest spray of white roses, had been ordered 16 days ago. 16 days before Lily died. No. 16 days before the funeral. The order was placed the same day I'd called my mother from the hospital to tell her Lily hadn't made it through surgery. They'd known for more than 2 weeks exactly when the funeral would be. They'd sent flowers in advance. They'd planned their absence like a dentist appointment. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. Something cold was settling in my chest. Something sharp and clarifying. I opened a new browser tab and logged into my bank account. The joint credit card account loaded on my screen. I'd added Tyler to it 4 years ago when he'd moved to Seattle for what he called a startup opportunity. He needed to build credit, he'd said. Just for emergencies. I'll pay you back for anything I use. I scrolled through the recent charges. Tuesday, the day before Lily's funeral, $850 at a sporting goods store in Seattle. Wednesday morning, while I was at the funeral home selecting a casket, $320 at a steakhouse downtown. Wednesday afternoon, during the service I'd buried my daughter at, $180 at a wine bar. My hand moved to the mouse. I clicked Manage Authorized Users. Tyler's name appeared. I clicked Remove. A confirmation box popped up. Are you sure you want to remove this user? All card access will be terminated immediately. I clicked Yes. Next, I navigated to the family Netflix account. The one I'd been paying for since 2019 because my mother said streaming services were a waste of money, but then watched 3 hours of true crime documentaries every night. I clicked through to account settings. Manage profiles. I deleted my mother's profile. Then my father's. Then Tyler's. The Hulu account. Gone. Spotify family plan. Removed all members except myself. The shared iCloud storage where my parents backed up 20,000 photos they'd never organized. Downgraded to individual plan. Their backup deleted. I pulled up the utility company website. My parents' house in Beaverton, the one they'd bought in 1998 and refinanced 7 times, was in my father's name. But I'd been paying the gas and electric bills for the past 3 years. Ever since Dad's temporary setback when his contracting business went under. I logged into the utility account. Changed the payment method from my credit card to no auto pay. Updated the mailing address to their house instead of mine. Let them get the bills. Let them figure it out. Then I opened the property management portal for the mountain cabin. That cabin. God, that cabin. I'd bought it 6 years ago with money from a lawsuit settlement after a gallery owner had stolen my work. It was supposed to be a place for Lily and me. A refuge. Somewhere we could go on weekends to hike and watch the stars. Lily had loved it there. She'd named all the chipmunks that lived in the woodpile. But my parents had started using it. Just for one weekend, my mother had said the first time, "We need to get away from the city." Then it became every other weekend. Then they gave keys to Tyler. Then to their friends. I'd driven up there last summer to find beer bottles on the deck and someone else's clothes in the dryer. I pulled up the smart lock interface. 4 access codes were programmed. Mine. My mother's. My father's. Tyler's. I deleted 3 of them. New master code. Reset all access logs. Download the history of entries for the past year. 83 separate visits. I'd been there 4 times. My phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Mom. I declined the call. It rang again immediately. Dad. I turned the phone face down on the table and went back to the laptop. The spreadsheet was buried in a folder within a folder within a folder on my hard drive. I'd titled it Budget Tracking, but that was a lie. It was a record. A ledger of every dollar I'd given them over the past 6 years. Row 1, $84,000. My parents' second mortgage. I'd been paying $1,400 a month for 5 years. I remembered the first payment. My mother had called me sobbing. "We're going to lose the house, Emily. After everything we've done for you. We gave you everything." I'd just sold a series of photographs to a major advertising firm. It was the first time I'd ever had real money in my account. I'd felt successful. And guilty. So guilty. So I'd set up the automatic transfer that same day. Row 8, $6,000. Tyler security deposit and first month's rent in Seattle. He was following his dreams, my mother had said. You're established. He needs help getting started. Row 12, $12,000. The new furnace for my parents' house. Emergency replacement. Dead of winter. They'd called me from a hotel because the house was too cold. I'd put it on my credit card. Paid it off over 8 months. Row 19, $4,500. Tyler's transmission repair. He couldn't get to work without a car. Family helps family, Emily. Row 23, $15,000. My mother's dental work. Implants. Not covered by insurance. She'd cried about being embarrassed to smile. I'd taken out a personal loan. The list went on. And on. Car payments. Insurance deductibles. Credit card balances. Property taxes. Medical bills. Veterinary bills for a dog I'd never met. $147,000. I sat back and stared at that number. My stomach turned. I'd paid them almost $150,000 over 6 years, and they couldn't be bothered to show up to my daughter's funeral. My phone was ringing again. This time it was Tyler. I watched it ring until it went to voicemail. 30 seconds later, a text appeared. WTF did you do to the Netflix? Then another, Mom says the cabin lock isn't working. Then another, call me ASAP. I set the phone aside and opened my photo library. I scrolled back to last December. Christmas at my parents' house. Lily wearing the reindeer sweater I'd knit for her. She was sitting on the floor surrounded by wrapping paper, holding up a book about constellations. Her smile was so wide. The pounding started at 7 in the morning. Not knocking. Pounding. The kind that makes the door frame rattle and your heart jump into your throat. I'd been awake since 4, sitting at the kitchen table with cold coffee and my laptop, going through old emails. I found one from 2 years ago. My mother asking if I could help with Tyler's car insurance. Just this once. His getting back on his feet. I'd helped 37 times according to my records. He'd never gotten back on his feet. The pounding intensified. I checked the peephole. My father, red-faced and sweating despite the October chill. My mother beside him, arms crossed, her mouth set in that tight line I'd known since childhood. The one that meant I was in trouble. I unlocked the door but left the chain on. Open the door, Emily, my father said. His voice had that dangerous calm to it. What do you need? We need to talk to you. Open the door. I slid the chain off. Before I could step back, my father pushed it open and walked past me. My mother followed, her perfume, something expensive I'd probably paid for, filling the small entryway. My father went straight to the living room and stood in the center like he was surveying damage. My mother walked through the apartment slowly, looking at things. Lily's drawings on the refrigerator. The pile of condolence cards on the counter. The wilting flowers from the funeral. This place is a mess, she said quietly. Emily, honey, you're not taking care of yourself. I buried my daughter 3 days ago. Which is exactly why we're here. She turned to face me, and her eyes were glossy with tears that I knew, somehow, weren't real. We're worried about you. You're not answering calls. You're acting erratic. Cutting people off. Tyler texted me about Netflix. It's not about Netflix. My father's voice cracked through the room. It's about you spiraling. Making rash decisions. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. My mother sat down on the couch, carefully, like she was in a stranger's home. Emily, we know you're grieving. We know this is the worst thing that could ever happen. But you're not well. You're isolating yourself. I'm isolating myself. The laugh that came out of me sounded wrong. You didn't come to the funeral. None of you. We couldn't. My mother's voice was soft, pained. It was too much. Seeing you like that, seeing Lily, we couldn't handle it. We thought it would be better if we gave you space. Space. You gave me space. While you were buying a $3 million house. The room went quiet. My father exhaled slowly. That's what this is about. Is it not worth being about? That house, my mother said carefully, is an investment. It's for the whole family. There's room for you there, Emily. A fresh start. Away from all this. She gestured vaguely at the apartment, at the reminders of Lily everywhere. I didn't invest in that house. Not directly, no. My father sat down on the arm of the couch. But the money Lily left behind. Don't. The word came out sharper than I intended. Don't say her name like that. The inheritance, he corrected, his jaw tight. That money needs to be managed properly. You're not in a state to make financial decisions right now. Anyone can see that. My mother reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. Cream-colored. Professional. She set it on the coffee table and slid it toward me. What is that? It's a conservatorship agreement, my father said. Temporary. Just until you're stable again. I stared at the folder like it was a snake. We talked to a lawyer, my mother continued. And a psychologist. They both agree this is the right move. You're showing signs of serious distress. The isolation, the paranoia, the the erratic behavior. Erratic behavior. Cutting off family members. Changing passwords. Locking people out of properties they've been using for years. My father stood up. That's not normal, Emily. That's someone who's breaking down. I paid for that cabin. And we've been maintaining it. Do you know how much work goes into keeping a property like that running? The winterization alone. I never asked you to maintain it. You never asked us not to. His voice rose. We've been helping you. We've always helped you. And this is how you repay us? By cutting us off? By acting like we're the enemy? My mother stood and moved closer to me. She reached for my hand. I pulled it away. Emily, sweetheart, please. We're your family. We love you. We want to help. She touched my face, her hand cold. Sign the papers. Let us take care of the financial burden. Let us handle everything while you heal. That's what parents do. Where's Tyler? I asked. They exchanged a look. He's in the car, my father said. We didn't think you'd want to see him right now, given your state. My state. This isn't you talking, my mother said softly. This is grief. This is trauma. You're not making sense. The Emily we know would never turn her back on family like this. I looked at the folder on the table. And if I don't sign? My father's expression hardened. Then we'll have to take other measures. What measures? We've already consulted with medical professionals. We have documentation of your behavior. The erratic decisions, the paranoia, the inability to care for yourself properly. He gestured around the apartment. We can petition for an involuntary psychiatric hold. It's for your own protection. The air left my lungs. We don't want to do that, my mother said quickly. We really don't. But we can't stand by and watch you destroy yourself. If you won't accept help voluntarily, we'll have no choice. I looked at them both standing in my living room, my father with his arms crossed, my mother with her rehearsed tears, and something clicked into place. They weren't here out of concern. They were here because I'd turned off the money. And now they needed a way to turn it back on. I need time to think, I said. You have 24 hours, my father said. Tomorrow at noon, we need an answer. Either you sign the conservatorship voluntarily, or we move forward with the psychiatric evaluation. They left the folder on my coffee table. My mother paused at the door and looked back at me with something that might have been sadness on someone else's face. We're doing this because we love you, she said. Then they were gone. I locked the door behind them and slid down to the floor, my back against it. The folder sat on the coffee table 15 feet away, but it felt like it was pressing against my chest. They'd threatened to have me committed. They'd lined up doctors and lawyers. They'd built a case that I was mentally incompetent. All to get access to my dead daughter's money. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. There was one person I hadn't called yet. One person I'd been avoiding because talking to her would make everything real. Diane Mitchell. My ex-husband's sister. She was a lawyer. Estate planning and family law. I pressed call before I could change my mind. She answered on the second ring. Diane's office was in downtown Portland, on the 14th floor of a glass building that reflected the overcast sky. I'd only been here once before, years ago, when Lily's father and I were setting up the trust fund. Back when we were still married and still believed in planning for a future. The receptionist led me to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows. Diane was already there, sitting at the head of a long table with a laptop open in front of her. She looked the same as she had at the funeral, composed, professional, her dark hair pulled back in a twist. She'd been one of the few people who'd actually shown up. Emily. She stood and came around the table. For a moment I thought she was going to hug me, but she just gestured to a chair. Sit. You sounded urgent on the phone. I sat and put the conservatorship folder on the table between us. Diane opened it. Her expression didn't change as she read, but I saw her jaw tighten. She flipped through the pages slowly, making small notes on a legal pad. They brought this to your home, she asked. This morning. With an ultimatum. What kind of ultimatum? Sign by tomorrow at noon, or they petition for an involuntary psychiatric hold. Diane set down her pen. They threatened you with a $5,150. They said they have documentation. Statements from a psychologist. Have you spoken to a psychologist recently? No. Then they're fabricating evidence. She pulled the folder closer and took out her phone. I'm going to photograph every page of this. If they're threatening false commitment, that's a felony. She started taking pictures. Tell me everything. From the beginning. So I did. The funeral they didn't attend. The Instagram post about the beach house. The $2.5 million purchase that perfectly matched Lily's insurance payout and trust fund. The years of payments I'd made. The cancelled accounts and changed passwords. The threats. Diane listened without interrupting, taking notes occasionally. When I finished, she sat back in her chair. Do you have documentation of the money you've given them? I have a spreadsheet. Every payment for 6 years. Good. I need that. I also need access to your financial accounts. All of them. And I need you to not sign anything, talk to anyone in your family, or respond to any communication from them without consulting me first. What are they trying to do? They're trying to establish legal control over your assets by having you declared mentally incompetent. If they succeed, they'd be appointed as your conservator, which would give them authority over all financial decisions, including access to Lily's trust fund. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat on the table. Can they actually do this? Not if we move first. Diane pulled her laptop closer and started typing. I'm going to file a restraining order based on the threats. I'm also going to file a motion to freeze any access they might have to your accounts or properties. And I'm requesting a forensic audit of their finances. Why their finances? Because people don't buy a $3 million house on impulse. If they used Lily's information to secure that purchase, if they accessed her trust fund without authorization or forged documents, that's fraud. And if I'm right about what I'm seeing here, they're desperate. People don't threaten psychiatric holds unless they're backed into a corner. She kept typing, her fingers moving fast across the keyboard. How desperate? I asked. Diane looked up at me. Desperate enough to commit felonies. Which means we need to be very careful. Don't go home tonight. Do you have somewhere you can stay? Mrs. Kowalski next door offered. No. They know where she lives. Hotel. Pay cash. Don't use any cards they might have access to. They don't have access to my accounts anymore. Are you sure? Joint accounts, authorized users, old passwords they might know. She pulled out a notepad and slid it across the table. Write down every financial connection you've ever had with them. Every shared account, every card, every login they might know. We need to close all of it. I started writing. It took 3 pages. Diane made phone calls while I worked. I heard fragments of her conversations, legal terms I didn't understand, urgent requests for document reviews, mentions of fraud investigation. She was building something. A case. A defense. A counterattack. When I finished the list, she looked it over and immediately picked up her phone again. I'm calling our forensic accountant, she said. We need a full audit trail. If they've been accessing your accounts without permission, we'll find it. Even if they have been, what can we? Emily. She put down her phone and looked at me directly. Your parents threatened to have you committed to gain access to your money. Your brother has been stealing from you for years. This isn't a family disagreement. This is financial exploitation of a grieving parent. And I'm going to bury them in paperwork until they beg for mercy. Something in my chest loosened. Just a little. What do you need from me? Everything. Bank statements, emails, text messages, receipts. Any communication where they asked for money or made financial demands. The conservatorship papers. Documentation of threats. Every piece of evidence you have. She stood and went to a filing cabinet, pulling out intake forms and authorization documents. We're going to war, she said. But we're going to win. I spent the next 4 hours in that conference room, going through 6 years of financial records with Diane and her forensic accountant, a woman named Rita who spoke in numbers and found patterns I'd never seen. You've transferred $147,000 to your parents' accounts over 6 years, Rita said, scrolling through spreadsheets. But look at this. Every transfer you made was followed within 48 hours by withdrawal or transfer from their account to a third party. What third party? Various LLCs, holding companies. And one name that keeps appearing. She turned the laptop toward me. Tyler Patterson Ventures. That's Tyler's business. It's not a business. It's a shell company. No registered employees, no physical address, no tax returns filed in 3 years. It exists only to move money. Diane leaned forward. They've been laundering your payments through Tyler's fake company. Not laundering, Rita corrected. But definitely hiding. If I had to guess, they owe someone money. A lot of money. And they've been using your transfers to make payments without it showing up in their personal accounts. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from my mother. Please call us. We can work this out. We love you. I showed it to Diane. Don't respond, she said. They're establishing a paper trail. Making themselves look reasonable while building a case that you're unstable. She took a screenshot of the message. Every communication from them is evidence now. Save everything. Respond to nothing. Another text came through. This one from Tyler. Mom and Dad are just trying to help. Stop being paranoid. Then another from my father. Noon tomorrow, Emily. Don't make us do this the hard way. Diane photographed each message as it arrived. They're panicking, she said. Good. The hotel room was generic and comforting in its anonymity. Beige walls, white bedding, a landscape painting that could have been anywhere. I sat on the edge of the bed with my laptop, going through the files Rita had compiled. The pattern was obvious once you knew to look for it. Every time I'd sent money to my parents, it disappeared within days. Transferred to Tyler's shell company, then dispersed to creditors whose names I didn't recognize. Casinos. Private lenders. Something called Pacific Debt Solutions. My phone rang. Diane. I found it, she said without preamble. The reason they're desperate. What is it? Your brother gambles. Online poker, sports betting, offshore casino sites. He's lost close to $800,000 in the past 4 years. And he didn't lose it to legitimate casinos. He lost it to a network of illegal bookmakers operating out of Seattle. My stomach dropped. How much does he owe? As of last week? $640,000. Your parents co-signed on a loan from a private lending group to cover part of it. That loan is now in default. The lenders are not the kind who go through courts. What do you mean? I mean they have a reputation. There have been police reports. Threats, property damage, assault. Your parents took out that loan 3 months ago, and they're already behind on payments. These people don't wait. They collect. The beach house. The conservatorship. The threats. It all made sense now. They need Lily's money to pay off Tyler's debt. All of it, Diane confirmed. The insurance, the trust fund, the settlement. If they can get control of your finances, they can access those funds and clear the debt before things get violent. And if they can't? Diane was quiet for a moment. People who borrow from loan sharks don't have good outcomes when they default. I thought about my mother's tearful plea. About my father's anger. The desperation hiding behind the concern. What do? We move forward with the restraining order. I've already filed it. A judge will review it tomorrow morning. And I've contacted the Oregon State Bar. If they're working with a lawyer who's helping them fabricate psychiatric evaluations, that lawyer is about to have serious problems. Will the restraining order stop them from filing the conservatorship? It'll slow them down. But Emily, I need to prepare you for something. If they're this desperate, they might do something drastic. The people Tyler owes money to, they're not going to wait for legal proceedings. They want their money now. What are you saying? I'm saying your family might try to access your accounts without legal authority. They might try to forge documents or impersonate you. We need to lock everything down. Now. She walked me through it over the phone. Calling my bank to add verbal passwords and security alerts. Changing every login credential. Setting up 2-factor authentication on accounts I'd never thought to protect. Notifying the life insurance company that I was the sole authorized beneficiary and no one else should have access. It took 2 hours. When we finished, Diane said, "Get some sleep. Tomorrow morning we meet with the judge for the restraining order hearing. Your parents will be served with papers by noon. They're going to be furious." I know. Are you ready for that? I looked around the anonymous hotel room. Everything I owned that mattered was in a suitcase by the door. Photos of Lily. Her favorite stuffed rabbit. The last drawing she'd made, a family of stars holding hands. I don't know if I'm ready, I said. But I'm done being afraid of them. Good. That's what I needed to hear. After we hung up, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the small desk by the window and opened my laptop. The Facebook messages were still there. The ones I'd found yesterday while going through old communications. My mother had sent them 2 weeks before Lily died. A group chat with my father and Tyler. Emily's getting soft. We need to push harder. She pays when she feels guilty. Make her feel guilty. The car thing worked last time. Tyler, can you stage another emergency? Sure. Give me a few days. I scrolled further back. 6 months ago. She asked about the cabin expenses. I told her we're handling maintenance. She bought it. Keep her busy. She doesn't ask questions when she's stressed. The photography exhibit is next month. She'll be distracted. Good time to ask for the dental work money. A year ago. She's getting suspicious about the mortgage payments. We need to be more careful. Play up the guilt. Remind her of everything we sacrificed. She'll cave. She always does. I'd read these messages 3 times already, but they still made me feel sick. They'd strategized. Coordinated. Turned my compassion into a weakness they could exploit. My phone buzzed. A voicemail from my mother. I almost deleted it, then remembered Diane's instructions. Evidence. Everything is evidence. I played it on speaker. Emily, honey, it's Mom. Her voice was soft, shaking slightly. I know you're upset. I know we've made mistakes. But we're your family. We love you. Please don't shut us out like this. Your father is beside himself with worry. Tyler is devastated. We just want to help you through this terrible time. Call me back. Please. We can fix this. We can fix everything if you just talk to us. The message ended. I stared at the phone. 6 years of I love yous that really meant I need money. 6 years of emergencies that were really just excuses. 6 years of me believing that if I just gave a little more, tried a little harder, they would finally see me as something other than a source of income. I thought about Lily. About the nights she'd ask why Grandma and Grandpa never visited us. About the birthday parties they'd missed. About the school plays they'd been too busy to attend. They'd never loved us. Either of us. They'd loved what we could give them. I opened a new document on my laptop and started typing. Everything I could remember. Every request for money, every guilt trip, every manufactured crisis. Times they'd promised to pay me back and never did. Holidays they'd ruined by asking for money in the middle of dinner. The time my mother had cried at Lily's 4th birthday party because I wouldn't co-sign a loan for Tyler. I wrote for 3 hours. When I finished, it was 17 pages long. I emailed it to Diane with the subject line, additional evidence. Then I finally fell asleep, still in my clothes, laptop open beside me on the bed. The courthouse was downtown, a stern granite building that smelled like floor polish and anxiety. Diane met me on the steps at 8 in the morning. She was wearing a navy suit and carrying a briefcase that looked heavy with documents. They've been served, she said. About an hour ago. I got confirmation from the process server. How did they react? Your father threatened the process server with assault. The server filed a supplementary report, which actually helps our case. We went through security and took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The hallway outside the courtroom was empty except for a woman sitting on a bench, typing on her phone. She looked up when we approached. Mrs. Patterson? I'm Judge Catherine Brennan's clerk. The judge would like to see you in chambers before the hearing. Diane and I exchanged a look. That was unusual. We followed the clerk through a side door into a wood-paneled office. Judge Brennan was sitting behind a massive desk, reading through papers. She was in her 60s, grey-haired, with a kind of face that suggested she'd heard every excuse and believed none of them. Sit, she said without looking up. We Saturday. The judge finished reading and set down the papers. I've reviewed your emergency petition for a restraining order, Mrs. Patterson. I've also reviewed the conservatorship documents your parents attempted to file. And I've read the supplementary evidence your attorney submitted this morning. My heart was pounding. This is one of the most disturbing cases of elder financial abuse I've seen in my career, the judge continued. Except you're not an elder. You're 34 years old. And your parents are treating you like an ATM machine. Your Honor, Diane started. Judge Brennan held up a hand. I'm granting the restraining order. Your parents and brother are prohibited from contacting you directly or indirectly. They're prohibited from coming within 500 feet of your residence or place of work. And I'm issuing an order freezing any joint accounts pending a full financial investigation. I could barely breathe. However, the judge said, her tone sharpening, I'm also issuing a protective order for them. I'm sorry. Diane leaned forward. The evidence your forensic accountant submitted indicates your brother has substantial gambling debts to individuals with criminal records. Individuals who have been known to use violence to collect debts. If your family can't access your assets, they become a bigger target. I'm not protecting them because I think they deserve it. I'm protecting them because I don't want to read about a homicide in next week's news. What kind of protection? Diane asked. I'm ordering them to report to the district attorney's office. They'll be questioned about the illegal lending arrangements. If they cooperate, they might be eligible for a debt relief program. If they don't cooperate, they'll face charges for fraud and attempted extortion. Judge Brennan looked at me directly. Mrs. Patterson, I understand you've lost your daughter recently. I understand this is adding trauma to an already impossible situation. But I need you to understand something. Your family has committed multiple felonies. They've fabricated evidence. They've threatened false imprisonment. They've engaged in financial exploitation during your period of grief. This will likely result in criminal charges. I understand, I said quietly. Do you want to press charges? The room went silent. Diane touched my arm gently. You don't have to answer now. But I did know. I'd known since I read those Facebook messages. Yes, I said. I want to press charges. Judge Brennan nodded. I'll refer this to the DA's office. You'll be contacted within 72 hours. She stood. The restraining order is effective immediately. If your family contacts you, call the police. If they come near you, call the police. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Good. This hearing is concluded. We left the chambers. In the hallway, Diane exhaled slowly. That went better than I expected, she said. Judge Brennan is no nonsense. She saw right through them. What happens now? Now we wait. The DA will investigate. Your parents will either cooperate or they'll face charges. Either way, they can't touch you. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You just signed our death warrant. I hope you're happy. I showed it to Diane. She immediately forwarded it to her own phone. That's a violation of the restraining order. Screenshot it and call the police. I did. 20 minutes later, a police officer met us in the courthouse lobby. He took my statement, documented the text message, and said he'd follow up with my family. They've been served with the restraining order, he asked. Yes, Diane confirmed. Then they know better. This is a direct violation. We'll make contact and issue a warning. If they do it again, they'll be arrested. After he left, I sat down on a bench in the lobby. Everything felt surreal. Official. Like I'd set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. You did the right thing, Diane said, sitting beside me. Did I? That text, what if something happens to them? Emily, they made their choices. They borrowed money from dangerous people. They tried to steal from you. They threatened you. None of that is your fault. But they're still my family. Are they? Diane's voice was gentle but firm. Has your family ever shown up for you? Have they ever protected you? Or have they just used you? I didn't answer. My phone rang. The police officer. Mrs. Patterson, we made contact with your parents. They've been informed that any further communication violates the restraining order and will result in arrest. Your mother wanted me to tell you that she's sorry and she loves you. Okay. She also wanted me to tell you that your brother is missing. They haven't seen him since yesterday. My blood went cold. Missing. They said he was supposed to meet them this morning but never showed up. They're filing a missing persons report. I wanted to give you a heads up in case he tries to contact you. After the call ended, I looked at Diane. Tyler's missing. Or he's running, she said. If he owes $640,000 to the wrong people, and he knows the law is investigating, disappearing makes sense. What if something happened to him? Then that's on him. Not you. But it didn't feel that way. Tyler's disappearance made the local news by evening. Portland man missing after family dispute. The article didn't mention the gambling debts or the loan sharks. It made it sound like a family falling apart under grief. Which, I suppose, it was. Just not in the way the reporter thought. I stayed in the hotel for 3 more days. Diane called twice a day with updates. The DA's office had opened an investigation. My parents had hired a criminal defense attorney. The forensic accountant had uncovered more evidence of fraudulent transfers. And Tyler was still missing. On the 4th day, the police found his car, abandoned at a rest stop on I-5, about 2 hours north of Portland. His phone was inside, turned off. His wallet was gone. He ran, the detective told me over the phone. We see this a lot with gambling debt. People run before things get worse. Do you think he's okay? Honestly, if he's smart, he left the state. If he's not smart, he's hiding somewhere thinking this will blow over. Either way, the people he owes money to are looking for him. And now they know he doesn't have access to your assets. What does that mean for my parents? The detective hesitated. It means they're in a difficult position. 2 days later, my parents' house was vandalized. Windows broken, graffiti on the garage door. The message was clear enough: pay UP. The police increased patrols in their neighborhood. My parents moved in with my father's sister in Salem. Diane called me that evening. Your parents want to meet, she said. Through their attorney. They're willing to drop the conservatorship attempt. They want to negotiate a settlement. A settlement for what? They want you to pay off Tyler's debt. I laughed. It came out harsh and bitter. They want me to pay for Tyler's gambling problem? After everything they've done. Their attorney is arguing that you share responsibility as a family member. It's garbage legally, but they're desperate. The loan sharks are escalating. Let them escalate. I didn't borrow that money. Emily. Diane's voice was careful. I need to ask you something, and I need you to think about it seriously. If something happens to your parents, if this situation turns violent, how will you feel? I sat down on the hotel bed. Outside the window, Portland was lighting up for the evening. Normal people doing normal things. I don't know, I said honestly. You don't have to pay Tyler's debts. Legally, morally, you owe them nothing. But if you want to end this, if you want them safe, there is a way. What way? You could negotiate with the lenders directly. Offer a settlement. 50 cents on the dollar, maybe. Get them off your parents' backs. It would cost you, but it would end things. And then what? They'd just do it again. Tyler would gamble more. My parents would come back asking for more money. It would never stop. You're right. Which is why the settlement would include a contract. A legal agreement that they never contact you again. Ever. You pay the debt, they leave your life. Completely. I thought about Lily. About the college fund we'd built for her. About the life insurance that was supposed to ensure her future, not pay off my brother's bookies. How much would it cost? Probably around $300,000. Maybe less if we negotiate well. $300,000 to never see my family again. To never get another guilt trip, another emergency, another tearful phone call. To never have to wonder if they loved me or just needed me. I need to think about it, I said. I spent that night looking through old photos on my phone. Lily at 2 years old, covered in birthday cake. Lily at 5, losing her first tooth. Lily at 8, showing me the Constellation app on her iPad, explaining why Orion was her favorite. None of those photos had my parents in them. None had Tyler. They'd missed all of it. Every milestone, every moment. They'd been too busy manufacturing crises to be part of her life. The next morning, I called Diane. Set up the meeting, I said. I'll negotiate with the lenders. It took a week to arrange. The lenders sent a representative, a man in his 50s named Frank who wore an expensive suit and spoke with the calm efficiency of someone used to collecting debts. We met at Diane's office. Frank brought a laptop and a folder full of documentation. Tyler Patterson owes $643,000, he said, opening the laptop. Plus accrued interest and fees. Total now stands at $780,000. I'll pay $300,000, I said. Not a dollar more. In exchange, you release my parents from the co-signed loan and you leave all of us alone. Frank smiled. Mrs. Patterson, that's not how this works. That's how it's going to work, Diane said, sliding a document across the table. Because if you don't accept this offer, my client is going to the FBI with evidence of illegal lending practices, extortion, and racketeering. We have documentation of threats, property damage, and intimidation tactics. The federal case we can build will cost you more than $480,000 in legal fees alone. Frank read the document. His smile faded. You're bluffing. Try me, Diane said. He made a phone call. Spoke in low tones for 5 minutes. When he hung up, he looked at me. $350,000. Final offer. And Tyler disappears. If we ever see him again, the debt reinstates. Done, I said. We signed the paperwork that afternoon. I wired the money from Lily's trust fund. The funds that were supposed to buy her a future bought my freedom instead. Frank stood to leave. At the door, he turned back. Your brother is a coward, he said. He let his family take the fall for his mistakes. You should know that. I do know that, I said. That's why I'm paying you to make him disappear. After Frank left, Diane handed me another document. This is the no-contact agreement. Your parents have already signed it. If they violate it, if they contact you directly or indirectly for any reason, they forfeit $100,000 in penalty fees. It's enforceable in court. I signed it. What about Tyler? Tyler is in the wind. The lenders are considering the debt satisfied, but if he ever surfaces again, that changes. My guess is he's halfway to Mexico by now. I gathered my things and stood to leave. Emily, Diane said, are you okay? I thought about that question. About what okay even meant anymore. I buried my daughter alone, I said. While my family was planning how to steal her inheritance. I'll never be okay. But I'm free. 2 months later, I sold the mountain cabin. Used the money to establish the Lily Patterson Memorial Scholarship Fund. It would provide grants to underprivileged children interested in astronomy. I never heard from my parents again. The no-contact agreement held. Tyler surfaced 6 months later in Arizona, using a fake name. The lenders found him anyway. I don't know what happened after that. I didn't ask. I moved to Eugene. Started over. Found a support group for grieving parents. Slowly, carefully, built a life that looked nothing like the one I'd had before. On what would have been Lily's 10th birthday, I drove out to a dark sky preserve 3 hours from the city. I lay on my back in the grass and watched the stars come out. I'd spent 34 years being the person my family needed me to be. Giving them money, time, energy, love. Believing that if I just gave enough, they would finally see me. But they never saw me. They saw a resource. Losing Lily broke something in me that I didn't know could break. But it also revealed something I'd been too afraid to see. Some families don't lift you up. Some families just hold you down. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let them go. I stayed at the preserve until dawn, watching the constellations Lily had loved slowly wheel across the sky. Orion. Cassiopeia. The Big Dipper pointing north toward something new. The stars looked the same as they always had. But I didn't. And that, finally, was enough.